Okay, Amar Shmuel, from the bottom of Chaf Vav Amud Beis, last line on the page. 26b, last line. Amar Shmuel, Yisa Adam Doime, Val Yisa Bas Doime. Okay, so obviously, if one's looking for a marriage partner, he should obviously look for someone who's suitable and appropriate. Okay, now we're talking obviously here about somebody who's down to the wire, and his choices are either a known promiscuous woman or her daughter, which obviously, again, we might not know who her father is. If she's promiscuous, we'll address that. So Shmuel says, so the question really here is what's worse? So the Gemara says that, a woman who's, 1 second. Yeah. A known promiscuous woman is better than her daughter. Why? Because she was at least born and you know who her father is. Whereas the daughter of a promiscuous woman, her father is sort of unknown, and it's very likely that she sinned in her conception. Rabbi Dovid says, no. He should marry the daughter of a prostitute over a promiscuous woman herself. He shouldn't marry a prostitute. Her daughter, very likely won't live up to the ideals of her mother. And at least she's kosher until known otherwise. However, her mother clearly has lost that status of presumptive fidelity. Okay, so this is the debate between Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel. Meisve, the Gemara asks, Noisi Adam Doima. The person is allowed to marry a Doima, a promiscuous woman. Amar Rav of a Tizbra. So Rav says, does this make sense that Noisi Lechatchila? Meaning that a person should go ahead and marry a woman who's promiscuous. It's a surefire way to get yourself into trouble. If he wants, he's allowed to marry a doima, a promiscuous woman. So if that's the case, you have to retool the price anyway. In other words, if we're saying this price is incorrectly stated, so then we're having to add the word imnasa adam doima. In other words, one is allowed to marry a doima, not that he should. Then you can also add the words bas doima, the daughter of a promiscuous woman. Val yisa doima. I'm sorry. Tarinami bas doima. So that's why you can also add to the brisa the daughter of a doima. Okay, the hilchas and the halacha is yisa adam bas doima val yisa doima. A person should marry the daughter of a promiscuous woman rather than the promiscuous woman herself. Why is this? The Tanir of Tachlifa Bar Marova Kamedir Bafu, because Rav Tachlifa, the son of from Eretz Yisrael, said in front of her Bavu, Isha Mizana Boneak Sherem. If a woman is adulterous, her children are kosher. Why is this? Because we presume that she's with her husband more than she's with other people. So therefore, the Gemara is saying the child is preferred because the child hasn't sinned yet. Obviously, I'm talking about a child, you're talking about sort of marriageable age, but presumably they haven't sinned yet. They're not known to be promiscuous. Otherwise, they're a doima themselves. They'd be called a doima bas doima. In this case, there's no evidence that that the child, is problematic. The mother is certainly problematic, and the concern for the child's conception is not much of a concern. That's because even a woman who's promiscuous, presumably the husband is with her more than anybody else, and therefore you can still presume that the woman's husband is the girl's father. Okay, now the Gemara has a question. Boy, Rav Amram had the following question. Let's say she was indeed, highly promiscuous. Mahu. What's the halacha? So Gemara says as follows. Okay. With the exact medical terminology here is sort of a complicated question. Certainly not for now. You can look, maybe they can explain it. Women today seem to, the vast majority of women can conceive only at roughly the time of her ovulation and a little bit thereafter before. There might be a second window. by modern observations. That's second discussion. Regardless of the Talmud, there seems to be a debate whether the window of conception is samach levesta next to her period, or it's samach letfilasa around the time that she goes to the mikvah. Now, obviously, the modern world, the second opinion seems to align much closer to what we observe, our observations. But there does seem to be a plausible biological explanation for the second possibility. Again, I'm not an expert in these things, so you do some research on your own. Okay, so according to the first opinion, that conception typically happens next to the time where she menstruates. So then, this is not a question, because she doesn't know when it's going to happen. There's no way for her to make sure that her child is conceived by her husband. What's the question? The question here is, according to the opinion that says a woman conceives next to the time that she goes to the mikvah. It's typically a fixed amount of time from her previous periods. What's the story? Keeping the yodav and turim interlaw. Do we say since she knows roughly when she'll conceive, she makes sure that her child will be from her husband? Or do we say that since she's selling herself for money and she's very, very promiscuous, so then she's not even concerned for her kids, and very likely her child is not the daughter of her husband. Okay, that concludes this discussion. Sorry?
About the coup de grace.
Take him. Yeah. Take him. Let it stand. Okay. Ve'elu shebezdin. Okay. We learned that the court can warn the wives of someone who's gone mad, someone who's in prison, or the husband's on a long trip. Okay. Now, this next one is a bit interesting. So, according to the main opinion, this kinoi works only to have her lose her ksuba. It does not work to as step one of the drinking process. That if it leads to seclusion, she's not brought for the sake of the process. The husband himself has to give the kinoi. Now, the vast majority, the majority opinion of Talmud is that ksuba is a derabanan. It's a rabbinical enactment, which presumably means that this type of warning is also a rabbinical enactment.
For either the husband or for the baby.
Now, why the Gemara feels a need to support the idea from a pasuk is a bit interesting, because obviously the Gemara is trying to give a biblical reference to what seems to be a rabbinical enactment. Be that as it may. Tana Rabbanon. We're about a little more than halfway down the page. First one line is Shebezdin. 1 second. So in the opening verse of the parasha of Sotah, we learn the Torah says ish matam alomer ish. The rabbis eshes cheresh v'eshes Sotah. If in other words, if a man is having his wife, sleep around with other people, it's not just a man; it's even the rabbis eshes cheresh v'eshes Sotah v'eshes shimam, a regular man, and the man and the wife of a man who's deaf, mad, crazy, gone on a journey, or he's in prison. In all these scenarios, the court is able to warn them to have them lose a ksuba. And again, obviously, this is a biblical reference, but probably the truth of the matter is it's rabbinical, because the majority opinion is that ksuba is rabbinical, although there is opinion that ksuba is deraisa. I would think that the court's warning suffices to have them drink the waters of Sotah, to go through the Sotah process. The husband brings his wife. Okay. So what's the problem? The husband will bring the wife. We'll see that it has to be the husband vikina v'hevi. So the husband gives the warning, and he's the one who brings her. Rabbi Yossi says, this warning does suffice to have her go through the process. And when he comes out of prison, he'll be the one to bring her to undergo the Sotah process. What is the debate? Rabbanan Savri Be'inan Vikina behaving. The rabbis say that the one who gives the kinoi is the one who has to bring him. The one who brings him is the one who gives the warning, which means the husband has to give the warning. Rabbi Yossi saw in other words, the husband has to give the warning in order to bring her. But even if the husband didn't give the warning, he will still be exempt from paying ksuba. Rabbi Yossi Savar loy beina v'kina v'hevi. Rabbi Yossi does not require v'kina v'hevi, meaning the kinoi and the one who warns and the one who brings can be two separate people. The court could issue the warning, and the husband can bring her to undergo the Sotah process. Tana Rabbanan, we learn ashertista isha tachas isha, that a woman is disloyal with her husband. Okay, lahakesh ish leisha ve'isha leish. This tells us that the requirements of the man are the same as the woman, and the woman are the same as the man. What does this mean? Ve'isha leish l'may hachsa. So we'll soon see some interesting things. So one of them is Amr of Sheishis Kashem Shem Husuma Loha Mashke Sivanela Me'ena Isha Kacham Him Haisa Suma Loha Shaisa. So the Torah says that this adultery was hidden from the husband, meaning the husband would have been able to see it. She just did it in private. She tried to hide it from him. What happens if the husband couldn't see anyway because he's blind? So then she is exempt from the laws of Sotah. So just like if the husband is blind, he is exempt from Sotah, his wife will never drink. So too, if the woman is blind, her husband cannot make her drink either, because they're compared to each other. Another example of this, it says the woman stands, right, and she holds the mincha. But what happens if she doesn't have a foot to stand on? What happens if she doesn't have a hand to hold the mincha? Just like if the woman has no hand or no foot, she's exempt from Sotah. The husband has missing a hand or a foot, he's exempt as well, meaning his wife will not drink. Ravachi Amar Kashem shechigeres v'gidemes. Someone who's limp, missing a foot, v'gidemes, someone's missing a hand. Lo ha'isashoy, so they don't drink. The siv v'hemen ha'koynes ishel l'fnei Hashem and v'nosan al kapel. She stands in front, in the Beis Hamikdash, and he puts on her hands. So obviously she requires feet and hands. Kachu, similarly, if he was a limp or is missing a hand, then an amputee, he does not drink. Okay, Mar Ravashi taught, just like a woman who is a mute, she can't speak, she does not drink. When the Kohen curses her, she has to respond to the Kohen, Amen. Evidently, she needs to be able to speak. Just like she must be able to speak. If he can't speak, he does not drink as well. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes to find the new volumes. A little bit of an introduction to the next Mishnah is the story that happened on that day.
There's some printing on the end of the page here, so I think you can follow probably to where we'll get.
Probably.
I mean, you see, like it continues down here, so I probably have the point I need for right now. Thank you.
Okay, what was the story that happened on that day? This is in general rule. Whenever you see in Talmud somebody talking about that day, this is the story that happened. Okay, so if anyone remembers, the story is brought down in Brachos, Rabbi Leal and Rabbi Yeshua. Very, very good. It's very good. It is on. I don't know exactly what it is. Okay, so in the beginning of Brachos, Rabbi Leal and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Leal was the Nasi. He was the exilarch. He was the leader of the congregation. He was the Rosh Hashiva, the one who spoke. But he had it's hard to say he was a student. It seems that more he was certainly contemporary of Rabbi Leal. That was Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua was a contemporary, but he wasn't the lead scholar. And there were three instances that happened that Rabbi Gamliel embarrassed Rabbi Yeshua. One of them was a debate between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua, which day was in Kippur. So Rabbi Gamliel, as the leader, told Rabbi Yehodah that he must come to him with his money belt and his walking stick on the day that he thinks is Yom Kippur. And obviously that made everyone know exactly nobody would follow the opinion of Rabbi Yehodah. There were two more stories. There was one debate about the type with regard to Meiser Behema. What type of animal is required for the tithes of animals? And there was another debate about what was the third one about? I can't remember what the last one was about. Anyway, in the other two instances, when basically Rabbi Gamliel gave a ruling, Rabbi Yehodah gave a different ruling, and when Rabbi Gamliel found out about Rabbi Yehodah, he set out his ruling in public, and then he says, "Does anybody disagree?" So Rabbi Yehodah said, "I disagree." So he said, "Stand up and tell us your disagreement." So he stood up and he specified how he disagrees. And Rabbi Gamliel had him stand for the rest of the lecture. So you can imagine everybody sitting and Rabbi Yehodah standing. After the third time that happened, the rabbis decided that was enough, and they would not tolerate the disrespect. Rabbi Gamliel was according to Rabbi Yehodah. So they took away the leadership position from Rabbi Gamliel. They weren't going to give it to Rabbi Yehodah because he was the one who sort of was embarrassed. It wasn't, you don't give it to the guy's enemy. So they gave it to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Now, Rabbi Gamliel had a very strict rule. You wanted to enter the study hall, you had to be Toiche Kabari. You had to be somebody whose inside was like his outside. Now, how exactly did they enforce the law? So one of the theories is that they made it very difficult to enter the synagogue. It was sort of a secret passage, and only somebody who really wanted to come would know where it was. So basically, the door was locked. And the only way to get in was people who really wanted to get in, they'd figure out how to get in. Regardless, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was 17 years old at the time, and he grew beards. He looked like 70 years old. Anyway, he immediately ended that rule, and he opened up the doors. Apparently, they had to build 400 extra benches that day because so many more people wanted to come. And among the many things that happened that day, again, this went on for a couple of weeks before it changed, and then eventually Rabbi Gamliel was reinstated, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was put on a rotation. So Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah rotated how often they spoke. Regardless, that day many different testimonies of various different things came to the Beis Medrash, because again that day everybody who wanted to come was able to come. Many people brought with them halachas that nobody had known otherwise. The whole Masechta of Mishnayos and all the things that came up that day. And this Mishnah deals with a number of things that came up that day, and obviously, as you might imagine, this is going to be a significant tangent from Sotah. So first we begin with Sotah. Just like the waters check her, they check him as well. Who is him? We'll see. Him is the adulterer. He potentially would die as well. If she drinks and she dies, he'll die as well. Shenemar ubo, the word ubo is repeated twice. We'll discuss this more at length tomorrow. Just like she's prohibited to the husband, she's prohibited to the adulterer. Shenemar nitma v'nitma. The word v'nitma is spelled with an extra vav. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. That's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehodah said, Kacha yidurish Zechariah ben Akatzev. This is the explanation of Zechariah, the son of the butcher. Rabbi says, Shnei pa'am hamur b'parsha nitma v'nitma echad labal v'echad labayal. Rabbi says the word nitma is repeated twice, one to prohibit her for the husband and one to prohibit her for the adulterer. Apparently, this second drasha, this derivation was taught on that day, and therefore the Gemara goes on a tangent of other things that were taught that day. That day, Rabbi Akiva taught. Okay, very interesting. One of the features of a klicheres, an earthenware vessel, most tumah, as we've seen in the past, gets done. At least probably the biggest category of tumah is tumas maga, touching. Basically, any type of tumah happens through touching, with one exception. That is a klicheres. Klicheres does not become tummy through touching; it becomes tummy by an item being suspended inside of it. So if you think if you hang a little bug inside the klicheres on a string, everything inside is tummy, including the klicheres itself. If you have the bug crawl on the outside, is not tummy. Okay, but one of the interesting points here is that we'll discuss this. Be discussed more tomorrow or the day afterwards. There's two rules to whenever the Torah says tummy, it means that whatever becomes tummy creates more tumah. The final level of tumah is called posel. We discussed this a lot, and we're going to Chagiga, I think it was.
Right.
Let's say regular food could become a maximum of a sheni l'tumah. That sheni l'tumah means that sheni we would call posel. Food that's a rishon l'tumah we would call tummy. Because a rishon, a first level tumah makes a second level tumah. And that's the maximum it can reach. A second level tumah does not make a third level tumah by non-truma, non-kachim. So we call a sheni l'chulin, second level we call that posel. The first level we call tummy. So we'll discuss this more at length, but just very briefly here. A klicheres, something falls into klicheres, it's a yitma. It makes everything tummy, meaning that the stuff in it becomes tummy to make a third level tumah. Any omer tummy el yitma, it becomes tummy. L'tamei acherim, to make more tumah. Lomad al kikar sheni shematame esashlishi, meaning that a second level tumah of chulin can actually make a third level tumah of chulin. Chulin can reach a shlishi l'tumah. And we'll discuss this at length. We said, Amr Bishur said, "Mi yigal offer me'inechem." Who's going to take the dirt off your eyes? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Shayisa Omer. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai taught Asidor Achar L'Tahar Kikar Shlishi. A generation will come and say that there's no such thing as a shlishi l'truma. Certainly not a shlishi l'chulin. She'ein lo mikra min haTorah, because there's no verse to support it from the Torah. Shehu tummy, to say that it's tummy. And we'll explain. So why is it tummy if there's no pasuk? Well, it's tummy because of the kal v'chomer. But a future generation is going to come and say that there's this kal v'chomer is without merit, and therefore, once they say it's not without merit, then they'll remove the kal v'chomer and they'll remove the ability of truma to become a shlishi l'tumah. And again, we'll discuss this at length tomorrow or the day afterwards. Okay, so the Gemara says, "V'alo Rabbi Kiva tamidach me'evi le'mikra min haTorah shu tameh shenemar kol asher b'teicha yitma." Rabbi Kiva was a student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he claims there is a pasuk. Evidently, Rabbi Yochanan says that Rabbi Shua says the teaching of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is going to prove Rabbi Kiva wrong. Similarly, Rabbi Kiva taught that day. Okay, the Levium had a gift of 42 cities. Obviously, the land of Israel was split amongst the 12 tribes. That is, if you count Yosef as 2 tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. Levi did not get a portion, except he got 42 cities. Each of those 42 cities, that means he got a fixed city size. This was an area for land development, where you build houses, etc. There was also, every city had around it an area called a migrash. A migrash is an area just for beauty. It surrounds the city. There's like a green belt. There's no development in that area. There's no farming either. Apparently, in Jerusalem, this is one of the architectural planning committee. One of the things they try to do is, apparently, again, I'm not someone who would actually notice this if I looked at it. Apparently, if you look at Jerusalem, there are a lot. It's sort of ringed by non-developed land, and they will never develop that land. They want a certain look. When you come into Jerusalem, it's empty, and then there's a city. It's not just endless development. And then obviously there is their income, so there's going to be fields, etc. So outside the developed area of the city where the houses are, there's 2,000 amma. Another verse says, there's 1,000 amas surrounding the city. What do you do with the fact that there seems to be a contradiction? Is it 1,000 or is it 2,000? Outside the city, the first 1,000 amma radius is migrash, it's empty land. The alpayim amma and the next and the 2,000 amas, meaning the next 1,000 amma radius is tchum Shabbos. Is how far you're allowed to walk on Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer ben Noshel basically, Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi, basically says, Elef amma migrash. 1,000 amma is empty land, migrash. Alpayim amma sodis akramim, in the next 2,000 amas, those are fields and vineyards for their support. Support this. So Levim can work the land and make a living from that. Rabbi Kiva taught that day. So in general, when Moshe teaches us the Torah, so what does it say? What does that mean? God tells Moshe something, and then he tells him to repeat it. Right? In other words, here is the law. Go tell the Jewish people. However, in Oz Yashar, what's the lamer? They all started singing lamer, meaning that there was sort of a repetition of the saying. How is it repeated? She'en Talmud lamer lamer, or ma Talmud lamer lamer. What does the word lamer teach me? Melamed shah Yisrael einen shira achra shal Moshe al kol davar v'davar kikaron es ahal. L'kach nemer lamer. The Jewish people repeated. So we'll see in the Gemara, but I believe the way it was done was that Moshe Rabbeinu would say Oz Yashar Moshe. Sorry, Ashir Lashem ki gai ga, and the Jews would say Ashir Lashem. So it's V'rech V'rama Vayam, Ashir Lashem. Aziv Zimmer's Kavahi Lishua, Ashir Lashem. Right? They would repeat the words Ashir Lashem. Lekach Nemer Lamer, that was the Lamer. That was the repetitive process. And I think we'll get to it in the Gemara in more detail. I believe this is the explanation. Nechemia says Kikaron Shema v'lo Kikaron Sahal. Like repeating Shema after somebody and not repeating Hal. This means that Moshe Rabbeinu said Ashir Hashem ki hagaisus v'rech v'rama v'yam, and they said Ashir Hashem ki hagaisus v'rech v'rama v'yam, and he said Aziv Zimmer's Kavahi Lishua, and they said Aziv Zimmer's Kavahi Lishua, etc. They repeated after him. That was the lamer. Next, Rabbi Shua ben Hyrcanus. Rabbi Shua, the son of Hyrcanus, taught le'ovad Eiv HaKadosh Baruch Hu ela me'ahava. Eiv, remember Eiv was one who suffered tremendously in the book of Job. Eiv is Job in English. So Eiv served God me'ava from love. Shenemar heinik teluni, even if he kills me, loy ayachal, I will still trust in him. V'dayin hadavar shokaloi, ani atzapa, ani mitzapa. Just borrow your article for a moment. All right, bro.
Sorry, it's not looking to you.
Yeah, I know.
I'm in the spotlight here in a minute.
So loy ayachal is spelled lamed vav. Does that mean? So the word loy, the word pronounced as loy, could either mean two things. It could be loy with an aleph, that means no, or loy meaning yes to him. So the Gemara says, does loy ayachal, to him I trust, does it mean I don't trust, or it means I do trust? So dayan over shakaloi, ani mitzap, ani mitzap. Does it mean I trust in him, or does it mean I don't trust in him? Talmud loimer ad egva, until I die, loy osir to mosing mimenu. Until the day I die, I won't remove my simplicity, my loyalty from God. Melamed shemi'ava also. You see from here that he served God from love. Rabbi Shua says to Rabbi Shua ben Hyrcanus, this is Rabbi Shua, the student of Rabbi Kiva, one of the 5 students. Mi'agal offer me'enecha. Who's going to remove the earth from your eyes? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. She said, "Dayrush koyem echashli avad koyem echashli avad Eiv esamakom elam yira." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai taught Eiv served God out of fear. Shenemar ishtam v'yashar yirei elikim v'sar mirah. A man who was simple, upright, fear of God, feared God, v'sar mirah, and stayed away from evil. Evidently, he was yirei elikim. He feared God. He served God out of fear, but not out of love. And this, despite the fact that Rabbi Shua ben Hyrcanus, the student of Rabbi Shua ben Hyrcanus is the student of Rabbi Kiva, who was a student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He teaches otherwise, but Rabbi Shua is claiming that is a mistake, and the proper understanding is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that he served God out of fear. Okay, we'll stop here, and it may happen over the next 2 days. Hopefully we won't fall. Hopefully we'll get a little bit ahead tomorrow, and the next day will be. Okay. See you tomorrow. I hope to get time.